itself getting passed by multiple cars, as I mentioned earlier on. So Nuroff in a very precarious situation, but he often finds himself in these places. He doesn't qualify as well as he races.
Up front, they are getting with Lee Aberdeen and Luca Varani, not very far apart at all here. But I just want to see how Alistair Haig deals with Marcello Kessler coming around the old hairpin.
Say it's not the best decision they've ever made, just not having done that under the safety car, really.
Yeah, they're taking their pit stop strategies from Ferrari lately or something. What's going on?
In turn one, just too much gas on them, too much feet on the loud pedal, and unfortunately he's dropped him all the way down the order. But Philip Hammer is out in front by an 8.91 seconds. Dan Michael is a wall there, sir. And definitely doesn't want to be hitting that earlier on as well.
Difficult, the understeer is in the dirty air through that final corner because it's such a long corner and you get dragged off into the grass very easily. He'll have the slipstream down towards the chicane. Peterson was briefly alongside, but that slipstream has saved him and kept him in third.
Yeah, Varani now lost a little bit of time to Aberdeen, about half a second. Peterson is Pike's pushed Morton forward up ahead. He's got out of line. Is now Pike going to have a go at Werrell? Don't push him off. He's in the championship fight. Jack Werrell chasing down Carl Jacklin. Further down, Rob Williams and Chris Barnes.
Sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's come back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such up. He's not on second and change. All of a sudden Miller's back in play.
On to the back end of Phil Jocelyn. So there's been a lot of movers and shakers in this first 2 laps here for race.
Absolutely serious racing league. Everybody's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's all about the entertainment. So I hope everybody is enjoying themselves out there in the chat. We know that Ron is been enjoying himself watching the Burger King machines off into the grass a little bit there as they're really bunching up now.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the 9th round of the iGPFun Super Formula Lights Championship. My name is Zach Sween. I've got Dean Biggles alongside me in the commentary booth as we take to a fantastic circuit here in Portugal. One that, of course, you'll be familiar in recent years with Formula One, but one that has really stapled itself into motorsport with fantastic racing. It is, of course, the roller coaster that is Portimao, or Algarve as it is, of course, sometimes known as well. Dean, of course, welcome into what is a fantastic championship, an abundance of cars in what is some very raceable Super Formula Lights.
Absolutely, Zachary. Welcome, everybody. Of course, to undergoing their qualifying session with about 6 minutes and change to go. But there it is. So very, very close and tight at the top of the team championship hunt there.
Yeah, it really is. Luca Varani ahead of Lee Aberdeen. That, of course, as you can see, only 8 points separate them. Tony Jimenez as well is there in third, just again a further 4 behind Lee Aberdeen. Brent Ruiz still firmly within a shout as well on 272. Jakub Olszewski as well, the top 5. Again, all of them firmly within reach as we approach the latter part English eventually will come out of mouth. Latter part of this championship. We've got Portimao, Suzuka, Kota and Watkins Glen, as well as the SFL Team Cup as well, but I'm not entirely sure if that's included in the championship as well. So only a couple of rounds left to go, which means everyone inside that top 5 firmly in contention. You've then, of course, got Rehan Hakim, very closely followed by the likes of Andy Flint as well, and you could read the rest all the way down. Very, very close, very, very tight championship, particularly at the front, which means that, well, each round from now until the end of the season is going to count tremendously. But Portimao is a very raceable circuit, as we say, in very raceable cars as well in the Super Formula Lights. You can't get your elbows out, so I'm hoping we're going to see some drama.
Well, take us a hot lap around this track as we always generally do there at the moment, and as we're actually running on board with Tony Jimenez. That's the number 11 machine. I'll get the track map up for you, sir, so you can see currently at the moment where he is on this tricky roller coaster circuit.
Yeah, coming through turn 4 now, down the hill towards the hairpin. Tony Jimenez, of course, P3 in the championship. Prime overtaking opportunity is going to be that hairpin. Very heavy braking zone, particularly on the first lap, of course, because it's their first overtaking opportunity of the lap. No active overtakes until after turn 4. That's where people are going to be looking to make their move. Into this very tricky uphill right-hander as well here at Samsung, as it's called. Very difficult to get the car planted as it rises up over the crest, trying to put your foot down. Easy for the rear end to go as you're trying to nurse the car in. Again, a very difficult double right-hander here as well. You're trying to bring the car to the outside to hook yourself up for that second right, and then it's about the compression at the bottom of this hill, gripping the car back up as you approach the final sector. Again, uphill as you're braking and turning. Almost a blind exit as well as you run your way towards the penultimate corner. Again, it's just about trusting the car, following that dedicated line, putting your foot to the floor, and then again trusting that the car sticks. This long right-hander here at the final corner, again, it's all about trust. You've got no grip at the crest, but then as you decompress your way back down at the bottom, the car suddenly grips up. Similar sort of to Paddock Hill Bend at Brands Hatch, of course, with everyone's race at Brands Hatch basically. That bottom of the hill at Paddock Hill, again, the car just grips up quite nicely. We'll run you to the rest of the lap, I suppose, if he's going on consecutive runs through turn 1 into 2, again, all just nicely flowing into each other. Into turn 3 from lap 2 onwards, again, decent overtaking opportunity before this very difficult climb up through the left at turn 4. That's what I love about Portimao, Dean, is the fact that it is so undulating and yet still such a fun circuit to drive to hot lap, but it also has very raceable properties about it. Usually racetracks have either got one or the other. They're either really fun to drive or really good to overtake, but this one, very nice blend between the two.
Yes, it is. Was there another particular track that you think it reminds you of? That's an interesting one for the chat as well. 2.5 quid quiet at the chat at the moment, but if there is, I don't know, it's difficult, isn't it, in itself? Would you class it close to? So nobody at the moment getting... Let's see if Brett's going to be able to do anything about it. He has set the fastest third sector. If he wants that number 1 machine, wants to dethrone Mackenzie Roon, well, he's got to get it done now. He's 97 thousandths of a second he needs to make up.
Yeah, we are into the final stages of qualifying, by the way. 27.5 minutes of a 30-minute session. So he is going to be going on to his final lap now, should he want it. Mackenzie Roon, an incredible driver when it comes to F3, SFL, that sort of genre, I suppose, that sort of discipline of racing, lower formula categories. He is remarkably quick. Those that are familiar with him from the iFormula leagues, from Sim Racing for Simpletons as well, he is a remarkable driver in this category of car, and he's going to be one to look out for. Not doing too well in the championship down in P17, but I think he's missed a couple of rounds and things like that. But on his day, he is absolutely remarkable. Brent Ruiz, Lee Aberdeen, both out of the session, so they're not going to be completing their final runs either. Luca Ferrani, championship leader, 6/10 off the pace, down in 6th place.
Yes, I'm wondering exactly if he just can't hook up this track for qualifying. We know qualifying is one thing, race pace is another, but as you said, there are overtaking opportunities, but you don't want to force yourself in a situation of having to make many overtakes, and especially with this crew up the road there that seem to have some serious pace this evening.
Yeah, they do indeed. But with these cars being fairly small, very raw cars as well, are the Super Formula Lights. They are essentially a modern day F3 car, basically, with the way they handle, the tyres, the grip, all that sort of thing. They don't have any hybrid or push to pass, anything like that. They are just purely as they come, raceable cars. Of course, when you go into the full-fledged Super Formula, then of course you get things like push to pass and this, that, and the other. But no, this Super Formula Light essentially is just an F3 car. And it's a very, very quick one, but again, very, very raceable. You can sort of go for moves up the inside. You can have a little bit of ding-dong. It's not detrimental, obviously not advised, but you can definitely race. Most importantly, though, is the slipstream in these cars, particularly at full-length Grand Prix circuits like Portimao, which are designed, obviously, for the big boys of the F1 cars and things like that. Even IndyCar can come around Algarve and do well. They are fairly narrow, short wheelbase cars, which means the slipstream is really going to help them around here, keep everyone nice and close. So while yes, Ferrani is, half a second or so off the pace, I don't think it's impossible for him to stay in contention going into what is going to be a very, very long race with tyre deg and things all to worry about as well. There's a lot more to indulge in as opposed to just one lap pace. If he can keep a consistent, stay in the slipstream, keep his tyres alive, who knows what can happen.
That's what some of the race information that we did actually receive from the boss man who runs this league. Specifically talking about tyres will likely be an issue, especially if the temperature will raise during the race. I'll show you currently at the moment the temperature during the qualifying, so we get an idea of that one. We're not expecting any rain at all. I did look at that weather forecast, but there it is. So 32 track temp, not too bad. 28 air.
So not the hottest, but definitely by no means a cold day here at Portimao, particularly with a lot of long corners, some heavy braking zones, very high demanding, quick change of directions as well. It can take a toll on the tyres. As I say, 30 laps. They have got the fuel to go the distance. We are probably looking at about a 45-ish minute race or so. So they aren't planning on making pit stops. They are going to the end, which means that if you don't want to waste time by coming into the pit lane, it is going to be very vital for you to actually get those tyres as long as possible, get them to the end of this race, keep them alive, because the last thing that you want is to get to lap 24, 25, 26 and just be swallowed because your tyres are dead.
Yeah, and the tyres were dead. He was also mentioning that race notice. He had a single practice race session and ended up with 8% front left and 22 on the other tyres. However, it did skid around a bit, but yeah, I don't know, I've been left with 8% tyres left. Oof. Especially if you are, remember, racing. He was doing it on a single racing session, so you're not wheel to wheel or in the dirty air of the other traffic and actually possibly going off your own racing line, things like that to avoid incidents. That's going to get a little more scrubbing on those tyres. We'll see. It'll be very, very interesting, but as you said, the gas tank will be half full and not half empty, or half full and half empty, but you won't need necessarily get down to that pit road, thankfully. I don't even know what the pit stop time is around here, but you can imagine it's going to be costly. Definitely
Something that you want to avoid, basically. Not detrimental. It's not like we're going to the Spa Endurance pit lane or anything like that. The pit road here at Algarve just spans the pit straight, which isn't the longest. Still obviously not great, so if you can avoid a pit stop, happy days. You should be able to hopefully get to the end of this race. Maybe we will see some pit stops because again, fuel rates and tyre wears are all driver dependent. Maybe the offset of coming into the pit stop can be outplayed by coming in and having some fresh tyres. Regardless of which, we'll bring you up the grid ahead of round 9 of this fantastic championship as soon as we can. I can tell you, there it is. Mackenzie Roon on pole position, less than a tenth of a second ahead of his countryman of Brent Ruiz, who'll join him on row 1. Lee Aberdeen ahead of Nicholas Vesman on row 2. Tony Jimenez, P3 in the championship, alongside championship leader Luca Varani, who would keep him company on row 3. Then comes the flying Finn of Tommy Mora in P7, ahead of Andy Flynn in 8th. Patrick Williams ahead of Joel Aguilera, the top 10, ahead of Jakub Ozalewski and Pedro Suarez, the top 12. Beyond that, of course, we run away to the likes of course, Kenneth Cornu, the Frenchman, in 13th. He's joined by Rishi Taparia in 14th. Marcius Putniks rounds off the top 15 ahead of Zotmore. Patrick Piper, John McKenzie, Chris Trott, and Giovanni Zaletio round off the top 20. We'll run you through the final few there. You can see the rest: Eddie Amos, Matthew Gracie, Rino Scattini, Adam Tausma as well. Ahead of just a few more, we've got Marcelo Kiesler, Dorian Arroyo, Oscar Artignano, hang on, I'll read that, Artignano, I should say, Chuck Moro, Patrick Rowlands, and then, of course, Maximilian Gebhardt to round off 30 cars. Very abundant grid here today, isn't it, Biggles?
I love a larger grid, of course. It's more action. Gives me more buttons to click on, too, if there's incidents on the racetrack. Now, we do know that there is no overtaking generally right there, Zachary, as we've got go boys out there from Raymonex.
He's going to be cheering them on. But yeah, no overtaking. Essentially, because it's a fun league and things, in the spirit of people surviving turn 1, lap 1, they try and keep it tame. So no overtaking to turn 4. They are going to stay relatively tame then, but a standing start nonetheless. Round 9, 30 laps ahead of us. We are underway in Portugal, and what a start there from Vesman from 4th place. He pulls himself alongside, of course, trying to catapult himself into 3rd place, but of course they are then forced to settle into single file by the time they reach turn number 1. Through into turn 2, of course, it's all about teeing yourself up onto that back straight towards turn number 5. Mackenzie Roon then is off well, ahead of Brent Ruiz, Lee Aberdeen, Vesman, of course, there in 5th from Tony Jimenez, so no major dramas. Think a couple of swaps in the background thanks to some slow starts, but this is where they can make the overtakes out of turn 4 towards turn 5, and no contention at the front.
And this is where you're seeing an opportunity of the Portuguese driver. Sorry, there is our Polish driver and the Portuguese driver. There's the overtaking. A few of them at the back here. You can currently see those positions up and down there on the track mapper on the live telemetry. And it is nothing really at the front just yet. Mackenzie Root still leading by a big gap at the moment there on Brett, who's under big pressure really from Lee, the only Aussie currently at the moment in this session.
Yeah, representing, of course, Australia, and doing a very good job of it up there in 3rd. But a great start for Mackenzie Roon. Definitely helped by the purple zone, because his initial launch wasn't overly great. Of course, we saw from Nicholas Vesman what a launch that was from the 2nd row, just to try and get himself ahead. I think it was actually Lee Aberdeen as well who got a really good launch from row 2, and they were forced to back off because they weren't allowed to overtake. So the front 2 of Roon and Ruiz definitely assisted by that initial grace period of the first 4 corners, but a lot of carnage to talk about over the first couple of laps. You've got Tommy Mora and Luca Varani. That's the battle for 6th place. They're fighting, and here's the one for 2nd place as well. Lee Aberdeen looking to contend with Brent Ruiz going into turn number 1, but no way through for now. A 3-car fight then. Ruiz from Aberdeen from Vesman, 2, 3, and 4.
I think that we've had a bit of an incident too coming out of the final corner. So we're going to replay that one. I'm completely confused by that track map at the moment too, as well. Too. It's like it's flipped upside down or something like that there, Zachary, because they're going into the opposite corners of what the track map's representing.
They're driving backwards.
They're driving backwards.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'll have to turn that track mapper off. It's going to completely confuse us. Been confusing me for some time. Here's what's happened, and I think this come out of the final corner here. I think Chris may have gone for a spin. They might have been collected by another car coming through. Hopefully not. It looks like it's
That's
okay.
an interesting spin. Oh, wow, he's lit up the rears again. And that's what tire temps do, ladies and gents. That is not where you want to be spinning. And oh, goodness me, there's Rishi Taparia as well. I think in a similar place, yeah, out of the final corner. There has been a bit of a pile-up then. So I think cold tyres off the initial getaway, catching a couple of people out as the car is obviously under a high lateral load through that final corner for quite some time. As you're trying to plant the throttle down, I think the rear end is very easily able to step away from you, and then of course the rears heat up, and then it's more difficult to get back going again and bring them back into a regulated tyre temp. Here's a battle a little bit further back. Joel Aguilera fighting away with Patrick Williams. That's the fight for P9. So Slipstream keeping everyone nicely in check. I mean, in the entirety of the top 13, there are only 2 gaps that are larger than a second.
Yeah, that's very, very impressive. Absolutely, for sure. As you saw, a couple of those drivers, of course, have a little bit. And there it is, Mackenzie Roon at the moment setting a fastest lap. And let's see, an overtaken opportunity here, currently going down into first turn, high-speed corner down the hill. Ooh.
Side by side, bit of contact as well. Joel Aguilera forced to, of course, concede. I think he's going to lose maybe 4 places as a result by the time they reach turn at number 3. Indeed, that is going to be the way the proceedings go for the Spaniard. So he tumbles down to P12. Patrick Williams then has got Oslewski for company. I think the pole is going to be looking to go to the outside of the hairpin, late on the brakes as well from the home hero, Pedro Suarez. He's unable to find a way through either. So that fight for P9 again continuing to rage on, but because they're battling, that gap between Williams and Flint has opened up beyond a second. And granted, there's no DRS or anything like that. Slipstream, the effect of that slipstream, the toe is really going to start to fade beyond sort of 8, 9 tenths of a second, because well, distance will just allow the air to circle back into a normal rhythm, and then you're not really benefiting from it. So Williams, if he wants any opportunity of climbing in this race, needs to focus his attention forward as opposed to defending behind.
And that's what this exactly at the moment, while Leaks had to unfortunately back off a little bit from the back there of Brett's machine, and he's under a bit of pressure now from Nicholas Westman, who's got Tony just on that 1 second bubble in behind them. So that'll be very interesting. Luca Costa, our championship leader, well, he dropped a place since the start, so the 222 machine currently running in P7 here at the moment, but maybe he knows he's under a bit of pressure actually from Andy, and we're going to also see this battle brewing up in the background again.
Very close between the pair of them, going into this very fidgety section of the circuit. Again, it's all about stopping and then building the power back up again. That's the run, of course, through 3, then 4, then down the hill towards turn number 5. Mackenzie Roon managing that gap at the front to 1.1 seconds. Here's a battle a little bit further down for P23. Chuck Morrow leading ahead of Arroyo, Antoniano as well. Roland and Piper complete this train a little bit further down the field, but nonetheless, these guys having an absolute blast here for the iGPFun League. Of course, over 20 years it has been running and continues to be as strong as ever. You've got Oslewski versus Patrick Williams. That's the fight for P9. The pole finds his way through as they run their way towards turn 10. This double right-hander, but however, Patrick Williams is going to be looking to launch one to the second part of the corner.
Oh, and there's a bit of contact. It's going to lift off at the moment. And Pedro's going to be on schooling on by that one. He might even lose another position because you also have the Spaniard there. Oh, this is definitely one little mistake like that, isn't it? It can easily cost you a lot of places currently at the moment, considering how close they are running, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. One small mistake and you tumble down the order. Was watching the Legends Fun, I think it's just called the Legends Cup at Brands Hatch earlier today as part of a support race for the British Touring Car Championship. And oh my goodness me, it is very reminiscent of this. Anyone that's seen any of the Legends Cup races, they have got them in iRacing. We'll get that to that in just a second, because Joao Aguilera is fighting away with Patrick Williams. He tries to go to the outside, and of course the Spaniard has to go to the inside. They're too wide, too deep by the time they reach turn 3. They've got Suarez and Oslewski as well. They're battling for P9. I think the pole just going to be able to hang on to turn 4. And exactly to what I was getting at with my point about the Legends race, it is like a go-kart. You chop and change positions all over the place thanks to the slipstream and the braking zones, and just how raceable these machines are. Oslewski looking to the outside, although a slight lockup is going to let him down, and here comes the Spaniard of Aguilera.
I think this is absolutely brilliant racing. Is what we'd like to see. Well, I wanted to ask you about, did you see those robot-driven cars the other day as well too? You probably knew about that one. That wasn't that exciting, of course, but that was the first time cars were driven by AI. And of course, wasn't there also an event in Monaco for classic cars or something like that in Monte Carlo as well? So a lot going on.
Yeah, the Monaco Historic was this weekend. For those that were familiar with it might have well seen Adrian Newey making a good move through the lowest hairpin. I can't remember who it was on, but it was on someone.
Wow.
He was driving. So was Zach Brown as well. They obviously rich men with money like to go racing with some old cars. I don't blame them. Honestly, I was at the Donington Historic Festival talking to some racing drivers, Rob Half, Jake Hill, Guy Smith. I managed to speak to them over the weekend and some Q&As, and I don't blame them. Old cars do it best, and they look absolutely and sound absolutely fantastic as well, which is exactly what we like to see. However, let's focus on the modern day and the sim racing side of things. Joao Aguilera ducking, searching for a gap, but it is going to be Pedro Suarez that puts the pressure onto the pole of Ovzlevski, who has to back out into turn one. But the up and under, the switchback is so powerful. Patrick Williams has fallen back into the pack as well. He's now been behind Putniks and Zamortor as well. They're battling away and tumbling his way through the field. He's now down into P14 after a couple of laps ago being up there in P9.
Huge battles, and still at the moment Lee is trying his absolute best. He catches Brett. As soon as he catches up to Mr. Maroons there, he then all of a sudden, I don't know, makes a little bit of a mistake. You could probably see whether it is. There's something maybe how he's configured his car, his setup, on his steering angles or acceleration or something like that. And then all of a sudden he's back at it again and drops behind P2 and comes out. Meanwhile, of course, all of this, you have the flying fin, one of the flying fins, tucked up on his gearbox, ready to pounce on any mistakes he makes.
Yeah, and that's what you have to be in Nicholas Vesman's position, is just to sit there. You don't have to do anything rash. You don't have to be in a rush. You've got time. We're only on lap 6 of 30. We're just over 20% of the way through. And there is time to wait. Take care of your tyres. Let the race come to you. Take care of your fuel so you can push a little bit harder later on relative to everyone else. Let this race come to you. Be patient, bide your time. Mackenzie Roon has extended that gap to 1.6 ahead of Brent Ruiz. But again, how much more of his tyre is he using? Is he going to drop back later on in this race? So many different things can still happen over the course of the next 24 laps. Joel Aguilera fighting again. Ovzlevski trying to put some pressure onto the home hero of Suarez, but no way through. These three nose to tail as they run their way through the first sector. And what a battle this is turning itself into be. I mean, these guys not waiting around at all. However, like I said, there is damage being done. Each lap they battle is more scrub they're putting into their tyre.
That's for sure. That's what I'm a little concerned about, these drivers. And I don't know, your racing drivers are going to send one down at the inside there currently, man. Can you get the traction down? Yes. Tell you what, Mr. Joel, he won't get it here. They'll still go side by side, but not a bad racing. But yes, once again, I'd probably want to sit back there in the background there, patch like Patrick or Zoltan is just watching all this and let them scrub their tyres to pieces, and then you'll have all the grip in the world, perhaps, towards the end of the race.
Maybe not in the world, but definitely relative to those around you. Are we going to take it 3 wide towards turns 10 and 11? Not quite, but definitely a thought about it. I think that was Cornu in the, in P11. He's fighting away with Joel Aguilera. He's on the left-hand side. The Frenchman come out of absolutely nowhere into the final couple of corners, and very late on the brakes was Joel Aguilera. Now, of course, it turns into the inside for the penultimate run. The Spaniard is through and up in a P11. However, Dennis Cornu, the Frenchman, has absolutely crawled his way into contention. Only up a position from where he qualified, but reeled his way back into contention in this battle. They are in the slipstream range. They are in attacking range up over the crest. Let's see what's going to happen towards T1.
Yep, you've got to commit at this point. And, it's at more of a high speed. There he gets tucked in there, and that's job done. And once again, that could be because the Spaniard might have said, look, I'm worried about my tyres. We are seeing a driver going in, and that's Reno Scattini. Now, I think it's because he has had an accident, and this will be the reason as to why he's decided to go to pit road.
So this is at the back end of the circuit, and he looks to the outside. I'm guessing he goes into the back. Yeah, he does. Way too late on the brakes there, buddy. And then, front wing, I'd assume is gone, and then pulls his way into pit lane. A clumsy mistake. Easily made, but definitely avoidable. This is the Latvian, of course, of Putniks. He was in that battle for P9 not too long ago. What has happened to him into turn 3? Takes a racing line and gets absolutely bombarded from behind. Yeah, that was not his fault whatsoever. Patrick Williams, it was. Now, the question is, he'll argue that he moved back over. I don't think he did.
Yeah.
That's on you, mate. I think that's on him.
Yeah, he's in front too. Remember, so much of that car was in front as well too, and he's entitled to go back onto the racing line. Now, if you were side by side or you had a half car length, geez, I mean, Formula 1 drivers complain about this every 5 minutes, don't they? But then again, they're in multi-million-dollar contracts. They are obligated to complain about it because the teams don't want them to ever accept responsibility unless it's clear today that you made an error. But I've got this Stuart Pearson out there said this looks fun. Are you taking new drivers or would that be next season? I think it probably. I'll have to check with the league there. We are seeing Marcus going because of that contact. I don't know if that was a lot of damage, but he's elected to take a dive down the pit road.
Definitely enough damage. The fight continues, by the way. John McKenzie of Scotland being overtaken, I think, by Patrick Williams, who, of course, did lose a little bit of time through contact with Putniks, who has now, of course, been put right to the back of the field, unfortunately for him. However, Patrick Williams allows McKenzie back through for some reason. Not entirely sure there. As you can see, the 147 not having the best of times this race, down 6 from where he started, but back at the front of this train, the one that, of course, Williams was a part of, that is now led by Pedro Suarez. He is there in P9. He's got Joel Aguilera with P10, Oslewski and Cornu as well, still keeping this just about a 4-way fight. The Hydra Race Racing Forces, of course, Hydra Race, huge names in the world of sim racing, you know, with the likes of Geodesic Racing and things like that. They definitely have a firm presence, and Suarez is certainly flying their flag high in this race in what is a very striking livery, a very decent position as well, in a 30-car field to be up in P9 at your home circuit. It's going to be tough work, though, from here to the checkered flag. It's not going to be plain sailing.
He's one of the biggest gainers, of course, in the top 10. He's up 3, so he's got that. You can hear the crowd, the virtual crowd cheering, of course. Our Portuguese home hero. But then again, he's got a Spanish driver behind him ready to make a run down the main straight with that slipstream. Let's see how if Joel can connect it, make it stick. Yes, he does. And that would be clever, I'd say, too, from Pedro to back off. I think the exit speed he had, too, immediately on that. But once again, as we mentioned, we don't know about the tyre scenario just yet. Who's playing it safe, who's not. Stuart, I'll see if I get you a link to the, if there is a link at the moment in the description or not, to the Racing League, of course, on the Discord channel. And then you can ask the man himself, Luca, who runs it, who's currently running in P7. Yeah,
and the championship lead, by the way, as well. That's fairly important, I suppose. He's the 222, looking very, very nice, is Luca Varani, the man behind the scenes, of course, and putting it all on. And, well, he's not half bad as a racing driver either, it seems. P7, not really the best of paces today, but that is why he's the championship leader, is because on a day that he's not looking his best, he's still up there in P7, potentially looking for more if he's able to keep his tyres in check. Jakub Oslewski as well, the 57 machine. I think he was about P5 or something in the championship when we looked. He is, in fact, not a million miles away from Brent Ruiz or even Tony Jimenez either. So, of course, down in P11, is going to be losing points on both of those drivers and would love to try and at least limit the damage going into the final few rounds. Eddie Amos, the Welshman in the 69 machine, of course, in what is very, I'd assume, Tron-inspired livery.
Yes.
That's what that reminds me of. I do remember that film. I am just about old enough to have seen it.
Oh, wow, you've seen a film. I can't believe it.
I have.
Usually don't watch any movies. Go ahead.
I have. Well, I don't know if because it's Tron Legacy, which is I think the newer one, but nonetheless I really liked it when I was growing up, so it's fine. I used to play like the game on random websites and things. Regardless of which, he is going to be going for a move. Thankfully, there is no trail coming out of the back, so when he pulls over to the racing line, we still have got Tausma with us. He's not been obliterated into pixels by any means, as Eddie Amos finds his way through. There is the Canadian, by the way, Adam Tausma, who has unfortunately dropped down into P17, but at the very least is still intact. That's the fun thing about this fun championship, is the fact that everyone is so close and competitive. We've got a vast range of skill levels and things like that to sort of keep each other company, which means that even if you're not at the front or running at podium level pace, even top 5, top 10, you still have someone to race with. Oh my goodness me.
Pedro goes off into the, he's like, oh, I just wanted to go off in that little sand area because I remember as a young child, that's where I used to play. Hopefully not reminiscing memories like that. But yeah, going back to that one, just to let you know, Stuart, the information is in those double check there, so just check the description underneath there, and you've got all the links to the website and to the Discord and anything you need, so make sure you connect them to that one. And the second one, to go back to that you mentioned about the skill levels, you were even surprised, weren't you, before that you spotted a few names there, in our championship grid that actually do a lot of real life driving.
Yeah, I was looking through the stats because obviously I was just having a nosy through the website and I saw Alex Dunn has run 3 races in this championship. I'm not entirely sure if it's the Alex Dunn, of course, the one that is associated with Apex Racing Team, races at the front level of esports and things, but obviously most importantly is currently racing in FIA F3, is the 2022 British F4 champion, and then of course the 2023 GB3 runner-up to, I think it was Callum Voisin who won the championship last year, who again has a very big presence on iRacing. Also Tobias Olsen, who again is very, very quick in single-seaters in the world of iRacing. So again, some big names in here. Obviously most notably on this one, Mackenzie Roon, as I say, very one that sticks out to me quite a lot. But there has been a lot of big names on these grids, and again, the variety is there. Everyone has someone to race, everyone has something to fight for, even if it's not the win or a P5 or a top 10. To them it is their own respective win, it's their own ambition, something to aim for, something to race for, and something to stick out these next 18 laps of racing. Vesman, though, we sort of checked in with him a little bit earlier on about how he's being quite idle and patient in this race, and that seems to be the status quo for now.
Yes, exactly. And this is a good thing about it because, you can rub wheels, literally door bang and rub wheels with some of the best drivers in the world, of course, and in the real world as well, in the virtual world. That'd be fun to participate, even if you are unfortunately having a day like this man is, of course, of Mr. Reno, because it seems like he's had another moment there, Zach, and remember he went into pit lane to get some repairs, and something's just not cooperating with this car, and you'll probably see it here. It's gone around. And he's just towed it at that point. I don't know if he's still sitting in here pit road. He might be like, I'm just done. Or either that or have a cat jumping in your lap or something like that as you're trying to drive. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So many different things can go wrong. I've had it before. I was in a league race, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, or something like that. And yeah, my dog ran into my room, caused me to crash, and I started at the back of the grid, which was great. I think I came through to like a P6 or something like that, regardless of which. Tapari is trying to fight his way back through, and on the inside of Chris Schrotz, and up in a P19, of course, a little bit further down, but they're still having an absolute blast battling away as we approach the half distance mark. However, that is not the way to keep a position. You usually overtake and then try and keep it nice and clean. You don't overtake and then immediately have a massive snap of oversteer.
It's going to come back in this one. I want to see if we get a replay of this. So it's going to set up the inside. But remember, you can do the switcheroo here. It's about when you get the power down here and don't get on the loud pedal too much and then have the rear end slide out. So there it is. Let's go back and have a look at that one. I just wanted to see specifically what you can kind of capture with that. There's that's just too loud on the loud pedal, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. Again, just rolling the car through the brakes and then, yeah, just tried to put the power down. Car wasn't really having much of it, but he was able to recompose himself and get back on it by the time they reached turn 5. And, more issues for Patrick Williams. And speak about trying to keep the tyres alive. The amount of skids and slides he's been a part of, he's not going to be looking too pretty by the end of this race.
This is the interesting part. We're starting to see little mistakes starting to creep in now. We're only halfway through the race, so... At some point, what do you think? I mean, we know that they can go to the end on fuel, but we're not 100% sure about those tyres. Maybe you're going to see some drivers gambling in there and taking an earlier pit stop, getting some fresh boots on there, and trying to slice their way back through the field.
Maybe so. It depends on the payoff. How much time are you losing on old tyres compared to how much you can gain on fresh sets of rubber? Of course, if it is a good payoff, and say if it's just for example 20 seconds to come in and do a tyre change, but over 15 laps you can gain a second a lap, or well, 1.5 seconds a lap, and in the end you gain 25 seconds back on fresh tyres. So if it's a no-brainer, you can give up that track position and fight your way through. If the offset of coming in is 20 seconds and then you gain a second a lap for the final 15, it's kind of like, yeah, I get fresh tyres, but I'm not really going to make the most of them. And again, it's that balancing act. What can you afford to do? What is going to be the better decision in the long run? And of course, what is the circumstance? loads of different things can play into a factor as we are there ticked over into the half distance of this race. Mackenzie Roon sees us through. Of course, not the fastest lap of this race, only a 35.5 going the way of him as of yet, as he is, well, on that previous lap at the very least, 35.5 was for him. On that previous lap, it was actually Brent Ruiz who was ever so slightly quicker. Maybe, give it enough time, we could eventually see a fight for the lead if Roon sort of starts to get complacent at the front.
Oh, and sorry, I'm seeing a hometown hero. Pedro's out. You can see on that scoring tower.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
I did notice.
I don't know why he's completely retired from that one. I mean, we saw he had a little bit of a mistake, but surely with the, I don't know how many thousand fans will be screaming you along here. So. And he's also battling in that championship hunt. Remember, you need those crucial points. It's interesting.
Yeah, not entirely sure as to why he would completely park it as such, but nonetheless a very unfortunate thing for the Portuguese driver who was, before his incident, running in P9 just ahead of Jakub Oslewski and Joel Aguilera as well, that fight for P9. He was amongst that battle, but unfortunately, of course, had that issue and has decided to park it in the pit lane. Mackenzie Roon, of course, in his beige liveried car, looking striking as always, again, followed not overly closely by Brent Ruiz. Again, that gap has been hovering around 1.5 seconds for quite some time. The good thing for Mackenzie Roon is that it's a big enough gap that he's not under pressure. The bad thing for Mackenzie Roon is that he's not got a big enough gap that he can start to relax. One small mistake, one small error, and Brent Ruiz is back onto his case.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct on that one. Hackham's out there was just having a little bit of a chat, if you'd like to read that, about, because you're talking about Hackham actually in the championship around that position where Pedro was. He's not on the track here at the moment, but he is in the chat.
Talking to us about Rayhan, of course, and he's not here today. Rayhan Hakim, P6 in the championship, is the German driver. He has been off racing at the Circuito Madrid this weekend. Couldn't get his hand on a sim rig, so of course he's had to take priority and do the real life racing, which I suppose, fair enough. If you're out doing stuff, you don't have access to a sim rig, you can't do a sim race. It's as easy as that. Adam Tausma still battling away with Solito, the fight for 16th place on lap 16. The pink and black car finds his way through, but good to know, and a good story to see. More transitions from sim racing into real life racing, or even real life racing coming into sim racing. Most recently, again, another client of JPB, the Sim Racing Collective, Frank Porter-Ruiz, does their Formula 4 Sprint Championship. He's been racing in French F4 this weekend and took a race victory. So great success, even at a community level in sim racing. They are boasting success in the real world. So yeah, maybe we have got the next star on this field right now. Maybe, who knows what we could see. Of course, do wish Rayhan Hakim the absolute best. And there is Tony Jimenez, very much in the fight for the P5.
Just got the overtake done exactly on the Tonys. The Tony and the Tony. And Luca wants a piece of this one at the moment and slices on by. So I wonder if Jimenez has any issue, or he's just taking care of those tyres, just dropping 2 places like that currently on lap 17, 30. About those racing rigs, so like not everybody can be a Max Verstappen, right, and have a racing rig. Jump on a racing rig instantly coming out of a Formula 1 car sometimes. I would be surprised if he doesn't have one set up in his private jet by now.
There was that rumour, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I think that has been debunked. I think he's got the bits ready to go, but he hasn't got one actually firmly set up. Wouldn't surprise me if he eventually does, though. Max Verstappen, of course, as part of Team Redline, in association with Verstappen.com, runs very closely with Team Redline, the likes of Chris Lullam, Diego Pinto, Gustavo Ariel, blah, 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 Luke Crane as well. Does a lot of things with them and is very successful. Matthew Gracie for the 707. This is down into turn 5, a little bit too late on the brakes. Runs a slightly wider line through and then just car snaps on the exit. Simple as that. I think, tried to carry a bit too much speed than the car could handle, and in doing so, in the end, the rear end gave up.
Naughty car. How dare you spin on me? Yeah, but this is tricky. That's the thing. It's difficult. I mean, as you said, you've got real life racing drivers that know how it feels to drive a motor vehicle around a track. And of course they get on the virtual sims, and all this practice does help as well. Just the only difference, of course, is that you might not be sweating as much and You won't be feeling those G-forces, and of course your heart rate wouldn't be going absolutely through the roof if you happen to actually, accidentally crash your car or damage your car, which is going to set you back some money out of your pocket too for your sponsors, or even out of your pocket, generally out of your pocket too, Roger, because motor racing is not cheap.
No, it's not. Anyone who has tried to ever get into motor racing has realised that even at the cheaper level, it can be in the thousands, tens of thousands, six figures sometimes, and that's at the lower end of the scale. Motor racing is expensive, but that's why there is a reliance on sponsors. We're speaking to Rob Huff and Jake Hill, of course, two BTCC drivers, last weekend at the Donington Historic Festival, and they were talking about sort of how they had to get into the BTCC, how difficult it was for them to raise the funds, and it is essentially a full-time job searching for sponsors, networking with people, finding the funds just to go racing at the weekend. And then obviously beyond that, to find the funds to be incredibly competitive, be with a good team and have the good mechanics and things around you, to the point that Rob Huff, when Jake Hill first started his racing career in the Touring Car Championship in 2016, I think he did his first race, Rob Huff gave him his first set of overalls and boots and gloves and things like that. And I think he still has them to this day, as is every little helps when it comes to refining your budget for the real life racing world. And it's why the sim racing scene is so beautiful, because you don't need a $13,000 rig to go racing. You can clamp a G29, couple £100, if that, £100 on it on Facebook Marketplace. Clamp it to your desk, plug it into PC, and off you go. Simple as that, and boom, you're sim racing. That is the magical thing, and you can take any car to any track at any time in the world and not have to worry, if you crash it into the barrier, about paying the fine, because there isn't one. There's no damage repair. Even better.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of it, of course, you've got drivers that come out of the sim world and into the real world, quick drivers. I mean, there's one in NASCAR of late. There's one almost in every series now, apart from Formula 1, let's say. But, they come literally, grew up racing on racing rigs and then got into a real car, and they're still as quick, if not quicker. So, impressive. But going back to that one too, you got to remember, like Lewis Hamilton's father, how he had to work 2 jobs, work his butt off. Remember, they recycled all the parts from some of the other teams that would just like have extra bits, and then they would get those bits that they'd throw off their go-karts and stuff like that, and they'd slap it all together. The Hamilton family weren't wealthy, but made use of what they had at the time, scraped up whatever they could, worked their butts off, and look at that. He got a son as a future world champion after all that. So all credits, of course, to the family and everybody else behind the scenes that also helped their racing drivers, and sons and daughters.
You get in what you put out. It's an investment, really, for all those fathers and things like that. Even if you're not overly wealthy, Lewis Hamilton wasn't. I think when he was 13, he was scouted, of course, by McLaren, who did assist in his driver development. But for those sort of 5 years between the ages of 8 and 13, his father did have to work very hard as to what at that point was essentially a hobby. Of course, he had no idea as to what success his son would go on to do. The statistically most successful driver in Formula 1. I think 103 Grand Prix victories, 104 pole positions, obviously 7 World Championships to go along with it. And yeah, a very, very good one. Sim racers as well, as we say. We've got Jaroslav Honzik, who done the Clio Cup race at the Hockenheim Ring this weekend. Cembolik Bassi went from F1 Esports to Formula 2. James Baldwin from World's Fastest Gamer to British GT. And a seat at the Spa 24. Jimmy Broadbent went from obviously sim racing in his shed to being a Britcar Praga champion alongside Gordy Much. So many other stories as well. Deacon Fairclough, I was there when he won his British F4 seat, and he's now just gone 2 out of 3 wins at Brands Hatch this weekend in British F4. Chuck Morrow looking to the inside of Taparia for P20 on lap 20 of 30, so 2/3 of this race complete, and still plenty of racing to continue on. That gap at the lead, though, interestingly, between Rune and Ruiz, less than a second.
You called it on that one, just as I was about to look up the top of the timesheets and see that, because we've been following those other small little battles that are happening further back. Ooh, that was a very wide line that Brent went out on. And so there it is. There's your top 3, all separated by 8/10. And of course, if you want a walking Wikipedia of racing knowledge, welcome along to Zachary in the booth, because I didn't know all the information before Zachary, but you do your homework, my friend.
Well, it's my job to watch racing, so I don't know. I suppose it's I'm good at my job. I don't know, maybe. There is definitely a lot of people that know a lot more than I do. I'm just good at what I do know. Tony Jimenez, definitely good at what he does as well, battling away with Luca Varani. Now, this could well be telling of a championship tale. Side by side through T1, the Spaniard is through. Luca Varani fights back towards the second braking zone here at turn 3. Has to back out of it, though, as he tries to nip underneath. Tony Jimenez, of course, trying to keep that car under wraps over the crest here at turn 4. Luca Varani keeps his foot in order to try and get a run towards turn 5. Pulls out to the left-hand side and is trying tooth and nail to keep this 6th place.
And this is also going to be very interesting on those tyres burning through them, as you mentioned there at the moment. This is not going to be helping them. With 9 laps to go. They're swinging it all through here at the 222. Of course, as you said, Tony needs his crucial points there. If he get ahead of this, our championship leader, Luca, then that's going to be a big smile on his dial. Some of the other drivers are around here, and I think there has been a few other little incidents on the track. We'll get replays of that soon. But still keep an eye on the top 3, because they're getting very, very close, as well as these 2, and a few other drivers further back.
Yeah, exactly. Luca Varani, Tony Jimenez, by the way. Varani is leading from Lee Aberdeen, who, by the way, is in P3. He could well be taking a championship lead after this round. Tony Jimenez only 12 points behind, so every point is going to count for him. Giovanni Salito, a little bit wide, I think. That is coming out of turn 5. Yeah, a little bit slow, unfortunately, for him. And some issues for the Spaniard, of course, of Antoniano through turn 1. Too much speed, rear end goes, around he went. Easy as that. Can happen to pretty much anyone. The Super Formula lights, yeah, they're light cars and, junior Formula. That doesn't mean they're any easier to drive, though. They are definitely a handful.
And this is the closest that the number 1 machine here has been to his countryman up the road there of Mackenzie Roon. So is Mackenzie Roon just slowing it off a little bit there and struggling with his tyres and not trying to risk it for the biscuit too much because it's bringing these contenders? This is it. Look at this. They're down almost 3/10. You haven't seen this since lap 1.
No, you haven't. These guys have been chipping away at this gap Mackenzie Roon has built for pretty much the last 21 laps. After lap 1, he was over a second clear, and bit by bit, they've been chipping away, plateauing it, and then closing in a little bit more, then dropping back a little bit, and then closing in a little bit more. Mackenzie Roon now, might be feeling the pressure. Of course, the later on in this race that we get, the tyres are going to be continuing to degrade, and what's going to be telling is to who has kept them alive the longest. Maybe Mackenzie Roon used too much of them too early on in this race.
Have a look at the different racing lines right now. Look at the completely different racing lines. Mackenzie Roon's using all of the track, and Mr. Roon, here, you can see, he's staying off those chicanes. Look at it, he's not really heading on those chicanes very often. Just keep your eyes peeled, because I've just noticed completely different racing lines, and he might wiggle around here to break the slipstream, but just, keep an eye on that one, Zach. Why would you do that, of course? That's to me, that's tire grip.
Yeah, probably so. As to what they do, driving style as well can really attribute it. Through turn 1, there's not really too much variance that you can do, but definitely through hairpins and things, different lines you can take. It'd be interesting to see what they do into turn 3. You can see Brent Ruiz using a lot less of the curb, and look at what that's done. Mackenzie Roon using more track going in, has kept that minimum speed up, and has got the drive through 3 into 4, and it's actually, I think, kept him in the race lead for the time being. It's given him enough of a run into the hairpin that he's able to stay ahead. The interesting thing, though, you are right. Brent Ruiz aims the car at the corner a little bit more, a little bit earlier apex, struggles a bit on the exit, but definitely has that closing speed going in, whereas Mackenzie Roon opts for more of a slow in, fast out approach.
Yeah, and it's working for both of them to certainly get up close, but we don't know which is the better for the tyres. Is interesting. That battle resumes, of course. We still have this battle resuming, because once Luca got past that Tony Jimenez is trying to fight back. We have had a few little other incidents as well. It looks like Chris Tott has crashed. Let's have a look here. Now, that's the number 79 machine. I'm saying a crash is in probably most likely a spin. You can see he's already saves it a little bit. Now he goes back around there after he overcorrected it. Thankfully, I don't think he was going to hit him, because enough spread of the field at the back there, I'd say, at the moment to save drivers from having to get T-boned. And Oscar has probably gone around here too, and we're going to see a lot more of these now, as you know for a fact, my friend, because this is crunch time with the tyres.
It is. This is where very much it is do or die. If you've got tyre left, this is where you can start to use them. If you haven't got tyre left, this is where you hope and pray that they've got enough to hang on to the end because they can just fall off a cliff. Tony Jimenez on the back of Luca Varani. They are closing into the Finnish driver, of course, of Tomi Mori just ahead. That's the fight for 5th. Of course, for both Varani and Jimenez, as we've already touched on, every point in this championship is going to count. Lee Aberdeen, though, if he's able to P2, P1 in this race, which is firmly a possibility, he will be going into the final couple of rounds with the championship lead, and that is something to look out for, because what a run that could well be for the Aussie.
There you go. You called it. That would be fantastic for him. So he's hovering in that P3 position, and he knows he's got two places up on our championship leader, who has the Spaniard breathing down his neck at the moment. But then again, of course, Luke is breathing down the Finnish driver, who's gained at 2 up the moment there. That's Tommy. So, well, it's interesting to see. And that battle at the front still... Well, this is kind of like reminiscence of the first part of the laps, wasn't it? We had these two little squabbles and battles, and then it kind of concentrated out a little bit, and now it's back in it for the final 6 or so. Look at that steering there. Definitely struggling right now with traction.
Yeah, of course, while not to a huge extent, but some extent as well, there is going to be a little bit of dirty air to contend with. The wake coming off the back of some of these cars. Are they overly complex aerodynamically? Not really, but are there going to be slight variants? Of course there will be. However, the slipstream is a bigger payoff than what you lose in the corners. Look at this absolute launch of a run from the Spaniard, who is going to pull to the right-hand side ahead of the championship leader of Luca Varani, take points away from him relative to Lee Aberdeen, and then, of course, gain some himself for Tony Jimenez, and that's what the Spaniard is going to be caring about most. 6 laps left to go, 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 30th lap of this race. And what a round it's turned itself out to be for the iGPFun League. That is the fight for the lead. The top 3, half a second between between each of them. Mackenzie Roon, one small mistake, and this lead that he's had from start to finish so far, well, could all be undone.
Aussie, get in there, my friend there, and see if he can do it. Hovering around that P3 position. He's going to be hoping at the moment the two, Roon and Rudes, do happen to come together there somehow along the line. Of course, you don't want the drivers to really come together, but hey, you'll take it if it happens, and then Lee can scoot on by there and get a race win there and put himself on the top of that championship hunt at the end of the day. But first of all, you've got to get to Barney at the end there with 5 laps to go. That's more important. Even to him, you'd say, I'll take a P3 any day. Let these Americans fight it out up the road there, whilst he does have that the 2 Finnish drivers behind him, and then Tony and then Luke, of course, the championship leader. But that doesn't go through your mind very often, does it, when you're a racing driver? You got your blinkers on like a racehorse. You just focus on this race first and worry about those results after. Yeah,
pretty much. Again, pressure is a thing that is there. Guy Smith, 2003 Le Mans winner, did touch on the fact that, pressure can creep in a lot. As a driver, sometimes you'll have lapses where you'll focus and think, oh no, what did I do wrong here? I'm a little bit wide here, I'm losing time here, I'm panicking, the championship, all this, that and the other, the pressure from fans or whatever. But he said 90% of the time, really, you are just visors down, and you're focusing. You're there to do a job, and it's a job that you know how to do well, and you just have to focus on that. The adrenaline is surging. You've got to keep composed in order to succeed, and that's what each of these 3 drivers are going to be doing. But sometimes, there might be doubts to creep in, like that one. Mackenzie Roon, first mistake of the race, and he's relinquished the race lead. And not even that, but he's dropped to the back step of the podium as well. Brent Ruiz takes the lead of the race on lap 26. Mackenzie Roon, maybe our theories are correct. Too much of the tyres used, and another mistake there as well. I think he's fading.
I think so. Yeah, you're right. There's been an issue, and it just looked like he was struggling quite a bit. Remember, he was losing time. He got almost to a 2-second gap from these 2 cars, and then just of late he's made a mistake. Now he's got to be cool, calm and collective, got to cool those tires down, and then keep yourself locked in firmly on a P3. Remember, hey, happens to you, it can also happen to other drivers, so you ain't out yet. I'm gonna see if I can get a replay of that one, of course, because we were kind of just expecting, or kind of anticipating is what I was going to say, that something was going to happen, and here it is.
Yeah, he went in, and then he overcorrected basically to the outside. Car wasn't having any of it. So there you can see, didn't quite reach the apex. Going in, of course, all the way back from turn 5 through 6, first right of 7. already struggling. Then you're onto the brakes, and he didn't missed the first apex, had to go full lock left, and the overcorrection just allowed the car to snap out of it. So Mackenzie Roon, easy mistake to make, especially when the tyres are old. What it has done is potentially cost him the race lead. So through the first right, onto the brakes, tries to turn in, and he's just got too much speed. More speed than the car can handle. He's held it well, in all fairness. A lot of drivers would have just, thrown it away. But he rejoins in P3. Fair enough, still within a second of the race leaders, but still not great. Eddie Amos as well, up in the 13th place.
And that's all it took. It didn't look like much at all, did it? It's just like, oops. It's not. It's a tiniest amount, but that amount, of course, racing at this level was just a little bit too much. But as you said, good correction to keep the car pointing in the right direction on the exit without having a full spin facing the wrong direction. And still in the background, you can just see him. So now, if anything, Lee, as you said, the Aussie here, can smell blood in the water here. He's like, hey, I've swum with sharks down there in Australia. This is not a problem. Let's see if I can take a bite out of our racing leader here. And then, as you said, potentially could be in the lead of this World Championship.
I think he might well be going for it as well. He tried to go to the inside. Of course, that then was shut, but the gap opened up for Lee Aberdeen. The Aussie is going to take the lead of the race into turn 1 on lap 28. However, the fight back could be there. The up and under for Brent Ruiz, who, of course, was waiting patiently for that opportunity. Mackenzie Roon to make the mistake, took the lead, and then a lap later, Lee Aberdeen arrives on the scene. He says, no, I've got a championship to win, I've got a race to win, and I'm going to take the lead of this one. Thank you very much. He is through up into P1. However, with still 2.5 laps left to go, there is more to come, and there it is. Lee Aberdeen under pressure as Ruiz launches a counter-attack.
Yeah, he's not going to give it up that easy, isn't he? Because he's also thinking, after that mistake there from Mackenzie Roon, who'd been leading this race for the majority of the way, these other two Top Guns here, they want to take this race win. And I tell you what, they got to be careful, because if they do happen to make a little mistake, once again, like just as Mackenzie Roon did, bang, all of a sudden, these positions are switched to Roo, flipped to Roo, just like that track map we had earlier. So, this is crunch time. But the only thing is right now, those laps are clicking over. And whilst Lee did lead briefly for about half a lap, they have a spinner in the background there as well, too. Thankfully, completely out of the way. That's going to be very frustrating, but let's see how it all pans out with about almost 1 to go soon.
Yeah, that was the Spaniard, of course, of Oscar Artagnano, the 37 that they had just put a lap on. I think he had some issues, and of course all three of them find their way through. The tyres are going off, though. 2 to go. Lap 29 of 30 here at Portimao. Ruiz, Aberdeen, Roon, the top three. These titans that have been fighting at the front all race long. It comes down to a 2-lap sprint. Mackenzie Roon all over the back of Lee Aberdeen. I have to say, Brent Ruiz, over the course of the second half of that previous lap, has been looking very quick. All he's got to do is keep those tyres alive. Even with only 2 laps left to go, it's about managing your tyres and giving you enough that you can fight with on that final lap.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of dilemma going back at the back here, but we'll have to keep it to the front, because there's a switcheroo. We're talking about P20 down there at the moment. We need to be talking about P1, P2, and P3, and I don't think the Aussie has got enough after being overtaken. So Brent should have this one in the bag. Well, you never say never with those tyres, and especially with a lot of other drivers really struggling themselves around that track. This is a time that you don't want to be involved in somebody else's incident.
Firmly not. You've got to be incredibly careful and make sure that you're so aware. Literally was watching Formula Sim Racing race, of course one of the top leagues on R Factor 2, Jone Simicic versus Manuel Biancalilla, 2 very recognisable names in the world of sim racing. Even they had some issues, and it was unfortunately Dennis Jordan that got caught up in it. They had an incident, Biancalilla and Simicic, and Jordan was the one that actually ended up worse off because of it. And it's all about being aware of your situation, being aware of what's going on around you, and how quickly you can react should issues arise. 1 lap left to go here at Portimao, and Brent Ruiz looks perfectly poised to take the victory.
But Mackenzie's also thinking about Lee went defensive on that one, if you see. Completely shut the door on him to say, my friend, it's taken us so long to catch up to you at the lead of this race. We're not going to let you take it back, at least the P2. There is traffic up the road there a little bit. I'm not sure if Mr. Al Racer is going to catch him in time there, and hopefully that car will get completely out of the way. As you can see, locks up into the corner there, struggling with tyres. You just don't want to be approaching these lap cars at full speed when it comes to... No, he's backed off completely. Thankfully for that driver over there. Because you don't want to be approaching them full speed into a corner, especially when these three are battling it out for the race win.
Yeah, you have got to be, again, comes back to that awareness thing. You don't want to be the one that ruins the battle for them. Half a lap left to go then. Lee Aberdeen has closed the gap to Brent Ruiz. Which of these two is going to be the one to come out on top?
Well, flip a coin, my friend, or let us know out there in the chat. Where is the possible last chances that Lee can get this done?
Well, it's got to be now. Now or never. 2 corners left to go. He's got to be thinking about it, putting the pressure on Brent Ruiz, who I think has managed his tyres to perfection. A small mistake out of the final corner, though, could ruin it. Lee Aberdeen, of course, is going to be closing points in the championship, but he wants all the glory here at Portimao. Puts his foot to the floor. It's going to be a drag race to the line. Has he got enough? As the checkered flag flies here in Portimao, side by side across the line, and it is going to go the way of Brent Ruiz, who takes victory for round 9 of the IGP Fun League here in Portugal. What a race that was, and just 33 thousandths of a second separate him from the Aussie across the line. Mackenzie Roon, unfortunately for him, he's going to be disappointed to be completing the podium. He wanted to be the one to take to the top step. Of course, we'll run you through the full extent of the finishing order in just a second, but my oh my, what an absolute belter of a finish that was.
Yeah, I tell you what, Brent would have been absolutely devastated to be lost just so that way, because Lee set the fastest third sector of all third sectors. He shaved like almost a tenth out of that. And that's what made the difference, wasn't it? Giving that exit speed coming into it. But yeah, still, at the end of the day, the American #1 driver will say, I still won, even if it was 33 thousandths of a second. A win's a win. And that's one to be celebrating. Give those results coming up in a second. For you?
Yeah. Well, 33 thousandths of a second, 33 seconds. It doesn't matter as long as you cross the finish line first. And that's what Brent Ruiz had done. What a race from him. Mackenzie Roon is going to be kicking himself, but I think it did come down to the tyres in the end. Of course, just waiting for Putniks, Tapiara, Mauro, Aboro, and... no, that's it, actually. Now just 3 drivers to cross the checker flag, and then we'll run you through the results of the 9th round of IGP Fun. Of course, the second season here in 2024. Already into May. That is absolutely disgusting, it must be said. But the Super Formula Lights did not disappoint here in Portugal. But yeah, there we go. All drivers across the checker flag. And now there are the results. As we say, just 32 thousandths of a second between Brent Ruiz ahead of Lee Aberdeen and Mackenzie Roon. Not at all a bad race for him, but one small error could well have cost him the win in the end. The 2 Finnish drivers of Vesman and Mauri complete the top 5 ahead of Tony Jimenez, ahead of championship leader of Luca Varani. However, is that going to stand going into round 10? Ahead, of course, of Joel Aguilera and Jakubowski that, of course, were battling for a good portion of the early part of the race. Andy Flint completes the top 10 ahead of the Frenchman of Dennis Cornu. Eddie Amos, Patrick Williams recovered to P13. However, unlucky 13 pretty much described his race. John McKenzie and Zoltan Zamota completes the top 15. Talsma from Solito, Gracie, Putniks and Tapiara the top 20. And then, of course, behind that, you've got Chuck Moro, Dorian Arroyo, Marcelo Kiesler, Oscar Artignano, Chris Trott, the top 25, and only a couple of drivers beyond that. I think the 2 DNFs, of course, yeah, there you can see Patrick Rodens and Pedro Suarez, who had some issues a little bit earlier on, round off the 27 car field that we had here today. Dean, of course, before we close off, what an absolute belter of a round that was. 30 laps and action from start to finish.
And that's what it's all about. Of course, you've got to have more of that upcoming for, 3 remaining races here on the JP Broadcasting Network. And, of course, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. At the moment, we had some questions out there. Of course, if you do want to be a part of this fantastic racing network, click the website there, go and join the Discord and chat to these gladiators. And, of course, well, as you said, too, that Luca, he did finish in P7. At May with Lee in P2. We're not quite sure if that's going to be a switcheroo there on the Drivers' Championship. However, we'll be certainly close. So you're going to make sure you're going to be tuning into that one there. Zach, over to you. Final words.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is unfortunately going to wrap up our coverage for this evening. Round 9 of the IGP Fun Super Formula Light Championship took to Portimao, and it was Brent Ruiz that in the end captured victory ahead of Lee Aberdeen and Mackenzie Roon. My name has been Zach Sweeney. I've had Dean Biggles alongside me in the commentary booth. You've been watching along live on the JP Broadcasting YouTube channel. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn the bell on, all that snazzy jazz to stay up to date with all things that come your way in terms of sim racing. For those focused on this championship, you can tune in a week's time on the 19th of May, same time, of course, about 9:20 in the evening. For those in the UK, translate that to wherever you are around the world, because we take to the home of Super Formula. We take to Suzuka for the third last round of the championship. From myself, Zach, and Dean alongside me in the commentary booth, we'll see you next week. Take care. It's goodbye for now.